I think EDH would be better as a whole if everyone gave CEDH an honest try. I think there are a lot of things players can learn from the experience that would improve their outlook on the format, but getting into CEDH can be tricky. In preparation for this video, I asked my patrons what is stopping them from trying CEDH. And a lot of players talked about simply not having other people to play it with. Some people mentioned that they had lists proxied and just couldn't use them because there aren't other CEDH players in their playgroup. And convincing your playgroup can be difficult. Partly because I think CEDH has a bit of an identity problem, which I'll get into more later. But luckily for you, I have been playing CEDH since 2016-ish, and we can round up to say I have about 10 years of experience playing CEDH. And I'm here to pass on to you some of the lessons I think you would learn from playing competitive EDH, without actually having to do so. And if you decide to try out competitive Commander for yourself later, I'll give you some tips on how to get into that. But before that, I need to tell you about today's sponsor, Void Monster. voidmonster.org is a new site started by MTG artist Forrest Imel. He made lots of cool MTG art like these cards on screen now, and recently I got a really cool solemn from him at Vegas. Every month there is a new release of exclusive TCG inspired accessories and apparel. Every new drop has a week-long pre-order period. The Greedy drop is the latest one and includes both a t-shirt and playmat. If you get both, you also receive a Pot of Greed treasure token as a bonus. You know Pot of Greed, the card that does... Actually, I forgot. Remind me in the comments below what Pot of Greed does. The playmat and treasure token both come in gold foil as well, and they just look so cool. Pre-orders end on July 6th at 12 p.m. PST, so there is only a limited time to pick one up. Go to my link in the description below or the card here to get your t-shirts and playmats today. So what would players learn from CEDH? First off, if everyone played CEDH, they would know what CEDH even is. And it really sucks when I hear a player talk about an evil CEDH player pub stomping, yet they usually describe a situation that isn't a CEDH deck. There's just this assumption that the powerful list is the competitive evil player. Not that this justifies playing a stronger deck at a lower power table or lying about power levels or whatever, but I think it speaks to the confusion players have about what competitive EDH decks even are. So what is a real CEDH deck then? Well, it's a meta deck, but what does that even mean? A deck that can win a CEDH game or even a CEDH event is not necessarily a CEDH deck. If you haven't played competitive MTG before, this might seem strange. If a deck wins games or tournaments, shouldn't it be a real quote-unquote deck for that format? And the problem with MTG is luck. There are lots of decks that 5-0 modern leagues or legacy leagues or whatever. And getting a 5-0 is difficult. You have to win 10 games of modern. But a lot of times these 5-0 lists will go on to have no results later on. And this happens in CEDH as well. Someone wins a small tournament, or even a slightly larger one with a deck, and it's never seen again. Let's look at Chillpeach Teller of Tales as an example. On EDH Top 16, we can see there is one first place result within the last 6 months. It has 3 wins, 0 losses, and 4 draws in that tournament. Now, I don't want to take away anything from this person's win. I'm going to assume that they're very good at Magic the Gathering to win 3 CEDH games with a 5-mana commander like Chillpeach. But ultimately, that's what happened. It's a deck that won 3 games of Commander, because draws are kind of silly in tournament EDH, so you can spin into a top placement by getting some intentional draws. So then we get to the question, is this a real CEDH deck? Well, maybe. I can't definitely say no. Maybe this player has cracked the code and this build of Chillpeach is going to be the best deck ever and win every tournament from this point onward. Although it's unlikely. I think it's more likely the case that this player is a specialist at the Chillpeach deck and has a lot of practice with it specifically, and other players just don't have the matchup knowledge and get caught out. A meta deck is a deck that regularly, consistently gets results. This way we can eliminate any assumption of potential luck. With these 5-0 lists or random, 3-0 lists here and there, maybe the first game was against other brews and those weren't very good decks. Maybe the second game, some people got mana screwed and weren't able to participate as well, so on and so forth. The smaller the sample size of games, the less certain you are that a deck is a real certified CEDH list, a real meta contender. And using a website like EDH Top 16, you can see that those meta contenders are these lists. These lists change a little bit and adjust based on how you're filtering, but it's basically the top 20 or 25-ish decks here, or a deck that can compete with these lists. It's not impossible to have a deck that is CEDH viable, which is not one of these. In fact, the CEDH Decklist Database is another website which has lots of these lists which are viable even if they're not the top meta. But it is near impossible for you to make a CEDH viable deck without knowing what the meta is. I mean, how are you going to build counterplay for Glarb into your deck if you don't know how that Glarb deck wins? You have to know the meta to counter it. And I think just everyone being on the same page about what CEDH even is, what it means, makes it a lot easier to talk about. And it makes it easier to use brackets if you actually know what every bracket is. Another thing you learn about in CEDH is the stack. I know most players have at least a base level understanding of the stack to play the game, but in CEDH, the stack gets a lot more complicated and there's a lot more things you have to focus on. Sometimes there are 10 or more spells and abilities on the stack at once. And the key to having complicated stacks is being very intentional with priority. In Casual Commander, I cannot count how many times I've avoided playing removal because somebody in a later priority order jumped at the chance to counter something and spent their removal instead. By doing that, they've effectively wasted removal since I was going to use mine. This is also how a lot of miscommunications happen in games, where players go, here's one combo piece, here's another combo piece, activate this and I win. But that's not how the game works. You have to give everyone a chance to respond. Being more intentional about passing priority and giving each player a genuine chance to think things over each turn will simply make games play out a lot smoother. You don't have to go back as often. There's less take-backsies. It really makes the game a much more enjoyable experience, and I love how in CEDH everyone is very aware of priority and makes it obvious when they move along in priority. The next thing players can learn from CEDH is politics. A lot of people seem to think that there are no deals or politics in competitive Commander, but that's not even close to true. Deals happen a lot because players know what meta decks are and how they operate, so it ends up being rather obvious when one deck is pulling ahead and going for a win. And because of that, since players are all on the same page, they can organize and work together to stop one player from winning. And in casual EDH, I wish people did this more. Many times when one player gets ahead, everyone looks around the table and everyone seems to act like the game is over. But it's not. You can just 3v1 that person. And some players might say that that's uncouth in a casual game. I disagree. That's how EDH balances itself. This is how you get more fair games of casual Commander, by focusing down the arch enemy. When you see someone draw a billion cards and ramp a ton of mana, you don't have to be like, oh wow, I can't overcome this. You should be able to talk to the table and say, hey, let's beat them up. And I wish more casual players were willing to go all in on an archenemy like you see in competitive Commander. Another aspect of CEDH I like is the idea of having counterplay built into your deck. I run into a lot of casual EDH lists in the wild that literally fold to the smallest of roadblocks. And I'm not even talking about stax pieces. I mean like literally any removal. A board wipe after someone dumps their hand destroys 90% of creature decks. I am constantly baffled at how many players will play decks with 0 ways to protect their game plan. No defensive counterspells, no indestructible cards, no other type of protection, and oftentimes no removal for things that would slow you down. Too many players lock in on their game plan without thinking about what their opponents might do, and then lose when their opponents do anything. Of course, unlike in CEDH, there isn't a meta in casual for you to think about and counter. It's a lot more obvious in competitive Commander in some respects. Hey, they're probably going to go for a Thassa's Oracle win, so you can play Cephalid Colosseum to mess that up. But in casual Commander, you can instead think about things in more general terms. What if your opponent makes a wide board? What are you going to do? What if they have a tall board? What if they have an indestructible enchantment that is causing you issues? What do you even do? Do you have a game plan? I really like that in CEDH, the anything goes attitude reduces a lot of salt. You should be ready for whatever, and it is partially your fault if you did not prepare for something while building your deck. And of course, in lower brackets, there are things you don't need to prepare for, but I do wish more casual players had this attitude. On some level, your deck failing to overcome something is your fault, not someone else's, for playing cards that are legal to play. Earlier, I talked about CEDH's image problem, and if everybody tried CEDH, it would fix that instantly. I know there was that recent tournament that had like an 11-hour finals or whatever, and people were yapping about how bad CEDH is or whatever, and I think there's this impression that competitive Commander is full of mean players who only care about winning and all these terrible tournament environments, but that is just not the case. For one, I play CEDH with my friends for fun. You can play strong decks casually. It's not literally played at tournament all the time. Also, the 11-hour tournament thing is an issue with tournament organizers and judges, not CEDH. Out of all of the years and years of tournament Magic I have played, I have never run into an issue with intentional draws, causing me to lose out on placements, or people slow rolling me, or any other weird shenanigans. And this goes for non-commander events too. Every tournament I've ever been to, I've never had issues. And the easy solution to this is to just not play along. When someone asks me to intentionally draw or split prizes or blah blah blah, any jank deal, I always reply with, if you want to move on in this event and win prizes, you have to beat me in a game of Magic the Gathering within the allotted time. I don't do deals. Boom, done. And then if they try again, I call a judge and say that they're slow playing and stalling for time. This solves every tournament issue ever. I have never had a problem at a tournament by just doing this one thing. You can do this at any CEDH event with a normal tournament organizer and you're totally fine. If people yap for like 10 minutes, they will get DQ'd. You can't do this at normal events. Additionally, a lot of players seem to think that CEDH games all end on turn 1 or something, but that's not even close to the case, especially in the current meta. People forget that, yes, there are fast combos, but everybody plays cheap interaction, so you just counter the fast combo early game. Or people think CEDH should be its own format, which makes literally 0 sense. It's just the strongest deck in EDH. No matter what you ban or change about the format, there will always be a best deck in Commander, which would be CEDH. There's no possible way to split the format. That doesn't make any sense. And I know I talked about this earlier, but knowing what a CEDH deck means helps when talking about Commander. I feel like I want to jump to the defense of CEDH as a whole every time someone assumes that a pub stomper or bad actor is a competitive Commander player. I really hate that association because ultimately CEDH is mostly played for fun casually. It's just Commander. And I think people's assumptions about CEDH kind of derails the conversation a lot. Okay, the last thing I think players would learn is actually a benefit to CEDH rather than casual EDH. This is probably the most controversial take here, and that's the ban list can be used for casual and competitive Commander without any issues. When it comes to bans, I feel like players who play casual EDH only seem to not understand why competitive formats have a ban list. A lot of people seem to think it's a slippery slope where players just complain about the strongest thing and want it banned no matter what. But that's not true. If the meta is diverse with many decks and strategies that are viable, why would anyone call for a ban? If the deck they like is playable, why would they want it to change? Additionally, basically any card that would potentially need to be banned for CEDH would have no impact on casual Commander, or the other way around. We can use Flash as an example. A lot of casual players acted like the sky was falling because we banned a card to help out CEDH. And after all these years, have you ever heard anyone complain about missing this card? No, of course not. The card that was never played, and it was definitely never played fairly in any casual deck. If you want to give creatures Flash, there are way better ways to do that. This was really only used to cheat out death triggers. You could use it to put an Academy Rector or Arena Rector in play and cheat out powerful cards at instant speed, or Protean Hulk and win the game. Basically, 0 casual decks were taken apart and dismantled because this card was banned, and it made CEDH a lot more enjoyable. And then we can apply the same logic to any card players would even consider ban-worthy in CEDH. Thassa's Oracle? Is it really bad if you can't Oracle win in casual play? I mean, when was the last time you saw this card win because of the devotion? It's extremely difficult to do, and you can't even play it in bracket 2 or 1 anyway. So a large portion of casual players playing bracket 2 can't use the card in the first place. It's basically already banned. Or what about Rhystic Study, one of the most hated cards in casual Commander? Is it really bad if this card was gone? It creates terrible play patterns in casual EDH, and is what pushes blue control mid-range decks to be overwhelmingly powerful in CEDH. In casual Commander, you can opt out of these game changers by playing bracket 2, but in CEDH you can't. So if something's problematic, it kind of has to be banned. I would really love to see Rhystic Study permanently removed. I think the dominance of blue midrange is very obvious. 4-color Tymna piles have been at the top for a long time now, and Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora are huge parts of the problem. I really wish we could have an actual conversation about banning cards in the format to make CEDH more diverse. I mean, I seriously cannot think of a card that is fun, popular, and exciting, healthy for casual Commander, which is bad for CEDH. Or the other way around. I mean, prove me wrong in the comments if you can, but I can't think of a single card that would fit that criteria. And I would love CEDH to become a little bit more diverse. I would love to see an actual look at what the ban list should or could be to help out competitive Commander. Because for all the misconceptions about the format that are out there, the fact that a handful of 4 and 5 color blue heavy decks dominate the meta, I mean, it's not a misconception, that's just true. And I wish people tried CEDH to learn that the ban list can help both without any issues. So what if you watch this and you actually want to play some competitive Commander? Well, it's actually really easy. I'll leave some links in the description below to EDH Top 16 and the CEDH Decklist Database. Both of these are great results to check out deck lists, and it's really easy to learn a deck because, for the most part, any popular deck that is an actual meta list will have primers or Discord servers dedicated to teaching people how to play and brew around with the deck. And because the format is entirely proxy friendly, and if you're ever at like a store or something and they say no proxy CEDH, that's super lame. That's not real CEDH. Do not support that. That sucks. I'm sorry if that's your game store. That's really lame. But because the format is proxy friendly, you can build a meta deck, learn the meta, play that deck, and then once you learn the meta and try to brew your own list, you can do so on a budget because you just proxy the whole thing. It's really easy to get into. The barrier of entry is super low. It's just having a printer or going to your local library and printing out cards there. And when you put it that way, it is somewhat easy to get your friends into CEDH if you just print them all a deck and show them the main lines. So those are some of the key takeaways that casual players can learn from playing CEDH. You learn what CEDH actually is and can identify it better. Best practices for passing priority and being more conscious about when you can and should act. Ganging up on the arch enemy, which I really wish more people did. Thinking about counterplay when actually building your deck rather than locking in on just your deck's plan. It would also fix a lot of things for CEDH players. It would get rid of their image problem because people would learn what the format actually is like to play. And I do genuinely think that it would be so great if we could talk about the ban list and try and use it to help CEDH out a little bit, because I do wish the format was a bit more diverse. And if you haven't played CEDH, you might not know what could or couldn't be banned. So I think everyone should try out CEDH. Thank you so very much for watching. Let me know what you thought of all of this in the comments below. I'm very excited to see what you have to say. Special thanks to my tier 3 patrons whose names you see here. If you want to be in the credits or participate in stuff like the earlier survey that I did, check out the link below.